Welcome. I'm Greg D'Alessandro, Product Manager of Google Wave, and this is the talk on, next slide, Google Wave in the enterprise environment. I'll be talking today with Alan Green, one of the tech leads of Google Wave, and Kris Muller from Salesforce. Next slide. So today what we want to talk a little bit about, and this is a question that has come up frequently, are how can businesses use Google Wave? So what we really wanted to do was talk a little bit at a high level of a number of use cases, and then really dive down onto a specific use case. The specific use case we want to dive down into is actually one that's a little more developer-oriented because it is Google I/O, and we wanted to show how the extensions can be used together to form a process around Wave. One thing I will note is that there's a bit.ly link at the bottom of this slide. This is the live Wave for this session. You can ask questions on there. This is the end of I/O. You guys know all this stuff, but that's the bit.ly link for it. All right, let's go. OK, without going into a lot of detail on what exactly Google Wave is, if you want to know, we have a lot of videos online, that sort of thing. But basically, Wave is equal parts conversation and document. It has a simple sharing model, allows you to reply anywhere, does live editing, and has custom extensions. It's when we first when we first introduced it last year at Google I/O, we showed a very broad vision for it, and today we want to really drill down on what people can do with it. All right, this is a quote from Mehrdad, who is we worked with on a project as one. There's a project within Deloitte spread across the world, multiple teams that they used Wave to do all of the coordination of the designs for the project. There's a case study online, if you're interested in reading, that goes into a lot of detail on how they used it. But he really felt like it helped them get things done faster and, because of less travel, cheaper. OK, why Google Wave in an enterprise? At its core, Google Wave is about collaboration. And when I say collaboration, a lot of people talk about collaboration. It's a word that's thrown around a lot. And they often mean it as somebody writes something, and then somebody else responds to what's written or comments on what's written. When we say collaboration, we really are aiming for people to be able to create things together, not just someone creates something and somebody else can comment on it. Now, most collaboration happens in small groups. Turns out, if you're really trying to create something together, it's very difficult to do that with hundreds or thousands or millions of people. A lot of these things end up happening in smaller groups. And it's also where a lot of the current tools are just not as well suited. They don't really give you the control and the flexibility you need to be able to work together in that sort of manner. Enterprises are, of course, full of small groups. At their heart, they are a very large group, but they're typically full of lots and lots and lots of small teams trying to get things done together. Excuse me, every enterprise is different. And so one of the things we want to talk about today is how you can use extensions to start with the basics of Google Wave, but really expand it to allow you to tailor the experience for your enterprise. OK, so what have businesses been doing with Wave? Any of a number of things. Campaign coordination for marketing campaigns, creative writing, writing code, release management, project management, month-end summaries. Next slide. All of these things are what we consider people working together in semi-formal processes. The reason I say semi-formal processes is because there are processes where everything is 100% automated. It's very heavily defined. Everyone knows exactly what needs to happen, and it happens the same way every single time. And this is something I suspect you guys are all very often painfully aware of, is that within IT, a lot of these things, you have some definition to the process, sometimes 50%, sometimes 60%, sometimes 80%, but it doesn't, but there often are these situations where someone needs to jump in and either fix something that's gone wrong, or there's just a part of the process and somebody has to go off and do this thing and come back and say that it's done. So one of the things that Google Wave does really well, and that we found over the course of the last year that people had found that it did well, is bringing together the sort of structured aspects of these processes, as well as the unstructured, sort of loose, somebody's just got to do something because everything's gone crazy kind of stuff. So bringing these together in one place, so rather than having a process in one place that's very formalized and steps go through, and then at one step in the process you see something's gone haywire, and you send emails out, you send IMs out, you have conversations in person, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, you keep all this information in one place, so if you ever end up doing postmortems, you can do a postmortem and find out what actually happened during that process by looking at all the information together in one place. So today, we're going to dive in a little bit more on one of these semi-structured processes, and the specific one we're going to be talking about is release management. Release management is something that most engineering organizations are very accustomed to. For small organizations, it tends to be very unstructured. For large organizations, very structured. But all of it ends up having to do, some build breaks and somebody needs to fix it, and you need to understand what's going on there. So the example we're going to be talking through today is a fictional company that we like to refer to as Acme Wave, and for those Federation folks out there, you'll recognize the name. It's a fictional 200-person company that has a half-time release manager that is taking care of their whole release process. Acme Pro is the name of this product. It has a website, backend, client, and database. So one thing I should note is we're going to be going through this example process, it's a release management process, but we're trying to use this to illustrate an example. We're not trying to use it as a way to dictate this is the way to do release management. We're trying to show how these sort of semi-structured processes can work, and the same things that we're talking about here can just as easily be applied to all sorts of other processes. In fact, I was talking to somebody last night who might be in the room about using the same types of processes for helping people learn a language. Which is a similar sort of semi-structured process. So as you're watching what we're talking about, think about how it might actually apply to the kinds of processes, not just your release processes that you work on. Okay, so step 0, just using Google Wave. So this is kind of a necessary first step. One of the things, let's switch over to Wave. So one of the things that Wave allows you to do, and I imagine most of you have seen it before. Click through, yes, perfect. So this is an example of what a release wave could look like. It has each of the components on it. It has to-dos for people on the list. It has some conversations in the middle of things that need to get done and questions that people had. So this is, and so on it, Andrew is commenting on one of the issues going on. Alan can see in real time what's happening as Andrew's commenting. Andrew is our helper in the audience. It's like a Where's Waldo kind of thing if you can find him. What it's doing is it's bringing together the ability to comment on this specific to-do item of test staging and have a real conversation around it. Not the kind of thing where you have a document that says someone needs test staging, and then in email somewhere else you're discussing, well, how does, has the test occurred, what are we supposed to do, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is just sort of starting to use Wave, bringing some structure together with some kind of less structured informal conversation. So now the next thing we're going to show you is what we refer to as step 1. And step 1 is augmenting existing communications. So it's going to be using a robot, and if you go back to the Wave, we're going to add a little robot that we wrote called, and when I say we, I mean Alan. I'm a product manager, so sometimes I say we incorrectly. It wrote called Mr. Release. And as Alan adds Mr. Release to the Wave, one of the things that you can see is immediately it highlighted all the to-do items, the things that were done, it crossed out, it automatically linked any of the individual issues. So you'll notice that we didn't change anything about what we were doing in the process, but this robot just picked out the things that are important to us, such as tracking who has what, and the specific issues so that we have links to them. It picked out those specific items, highlighted them for us, so that we now can have a better understanding of how it works. And with that, I think maybe I'll turn it over to Alan, who, as I said, wrote Mr. Release, and he can tell you a little bit more about how it works.
Right, so we've got a robot on the Wave. Who here's written a robot? Who am I talking to? Okay, some people, excellent. Robots are simply web applications, and Wave is sitting there looking at every wave, and as it changes, if there's a robot on the Wave, it'll make an HTTP request out to the robot. The robot decides what to do. It can interact with its own database. In this case, it's looking up a list of regular expressions, looking for the words done and to do, and applies annotations to that. It packs all of the changes that it needs to make to the wave back into the response, sends that back to Wave, and Wave then applies it. And this is happening, I don't know, within a few hundred milliseconds here. It feels very natural. Works quite well. So the next thing we can do, could you maybe flip back?
You got it.
Let's go up to the release roster. So this is a list of all of the releases that we have, and we've tied it together into a single wave. It's quite, if you've used Wave before to manage like a whole list of stuff, it's very easy to make these lists of things. This list is manually put together, and we link down to each of the release waves from here. It's easy to maintain, but it looks a bit ugly, and the list kind of gets a bit out of control. There's opportunities for people to put random comments in there, which doesn't help if you're trying to look through the list. So we can tidy that up by using a gadget. If we go to the more modern version. Oh, no.
Oh, hold on just a second. We're about to go to a more modern version. There we go.
So what we've got here is a gadget, which has all of the same information, but it structures that information nicely. There's a drop-down list with all of the participants on the wave, so it's easy to choose somebody. And basically, it's all the same information, but packed up into one nice little bit on the screen. And you can have conversations about it still. And you've got all that same kind of wave interactivity, which lets you run these ad hoc processes. Could you maybe flip over to the next slide, Greg?
You got it.
Right, so gadgets. Who's written gadgets at all and gadgets for Wave? Excellent. So gadgets, we use open social gadgets in Wave, but the way to think about them is they're a package with XML to define the gadget, JavaScript to tell the gadget what to do, and CSS to tell it how to look, and brings it together, and at the moment we just stick it in a rectangle on the Wave there. The interesting thing about Wave gadgets is that they can store their state in the Wave, so that everybody looking at the Wave sees exactly the same view of the gadget because they're looking at exactly the same data. Yeah, so the data's stored as key value pairs, and we've got a little representation of that there. But basically, standard Google gadgets. Great, thanks. Could you explain this slide, because it's all high level and processy?
Sure. OK, so if you've ever dealt with the release process, what you probably know is that you have on one side people like the release manager who deals with the process itself, and then you have people on the flip side who own the individual components. So you have somebody who owns the client. And you really need to bring both of those things together in an individual build to say, this is how you build this specific component, let's say the client, in this specific release, and how's that going? So when you're building the client for release 118, how's that build going? This is something that you can do very easily in Wave. You can have waves interlinked to each other, as we just showed you. But what you really want to do, if you want to have one of these waves per component per release, if you go to the next slide, is you have a really large number of waves. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to sort of work with this matrix. And while it's very useful to be able to have one wave per and have individuals be able to only, so the client person doesn't have to see what's going on with the back end build, just needs to deal with his own build, it's a lot of information to manage. So what we'll show you is that you can use robots to help start to manage this information. And this is something that is just available with the version 2 robot API to allow robots to really manage multiple waves and the information in those waves. I want to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Great. So you click through to the ultra-modern release.
Oh, the ultra-modern one. All right. Taking a little bit to set up our windows.
Great. So this is pretty much the same gadget, except now we've also got Mr. Release on the Wave, and Mr. Release can see what's happening in the gadget because Mr. Release can see the wave, and all of the wave state is stored inside the gadget. So Greg's going to click on the Make Wave button, and that's going to make a new release wave and then a new build wave for every component that's going to be in the release. So there's 5 new waves with just one click. And the thing is, they're exactly the right waves to make. So maybe click through to the release. So the release, the person who's managing the release, they just want to know the high-level view, and here they can see, here's the release, all of the components and their particular status right now. Conversations happen about it. If you can click down into a component, please. So if somebody's trying to actually build this particular component and get it out the door, this is how the little team working there can coordinate it. So we've just made this one. It's fresh, but in a typical component build, not everything always goes right, and there'll be issues and things and cherry-pick changes in a big list here. But they can then communicate their status back outside of their little team using yet another gadget here. And maybe click through to built there. Yeah. And then it's reflected the status back up to the release wave. So the engineer working on this particular component only worries about their stuff, and the release manager doesn't need to keep walking around to the desk going, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Because they'll see when it's done. Right. Some people in the front row think that's a great idea because they've had to walk around to our desk too many times. Maybe flip back to the slides, please.
You got it.
So what's going on here now is very similar to what was going on before. The robots put the gadgets into the waves, but now it's looking at all of the waves. When the change is made to one of the waves, it's able to push that back out to all of the other waves, and it can still interact with its local database. It's pretty much the same, but using this feature that lets it talk to waves without first being spoken to. So that's kind of all been inside Wave so far, but because a robot is just another web app, you can also pull in data from other places within your organization. So we've got a corporate server down here on the bottom of this diagram. The example we're going to use is a test server for our client build, and it's just going to sit there testing away, and when the tests are finished and all is well, it's going to reflect that back into the build wave. But could you maybe show our mock-up of the test?
Sure. I know, all this window moving around. All right.
Great. So we've just got a teeny little web app sitting on a server out there. Greg's going to pretend to be like the test server and say that this is tested now. And it's able, the web app then makes a call back out to, the test status web app makes a call out to the robot to say this test is done now, and the robot is then able to push that information back into the wave. So I think we've got a diagram for that, but it looks exactly like you'd expect. Great, so that's robots working on your waves, gadgets working in your waves, them working together, pulling in data from other places within your organization. But click through the next slide. We can do even better than that. We can pull information in from all kinds of third-party applications running inside your corporate firewall and outside your corporate firewall. And so today we've invited along Kris Muller from Salesforce, to come, product marketing manager at Salesforce, to come talk to us about the Salesforce chatter integration with Wave.
Thanks, guys. My name is Kris, and this is Kevin, and today we're going to be demoing collaboration in the enterprise. And just before we came into this session, I was hanging out with these two guys, and they shared their secret sign for iWave. It's this. Pretty big secret, right? Well, I think we should all have an exercise in group collaboration, and maybe everybody raise their iWave signs up in the air, and just give these guys some props on a really cool product. Right on. Thank you. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Salesforce, we deliver cloud-based applications that help businesses manage their sales efforts, their customer support initiatives. In fact, you can build your own custom application on our Force.com platform. Today we're going to be highlighting our sales application, and we're logged in as Jake Borland. He's the top sales rep at a company called Cirrus Computers. Across the top of the screen there, you notice a series of features that really help Jake connect with the people in his company, to stay on top of his customers, to manage his deals. And as a sales rep, the first thing Jake wants to do when he gets to the office is keep in touch with the metrics that matter most. What the size of his top open deals are, how he's tracking against his quota, what the health of his pipeline looks like. These dashboards provide him instant visibility into what he cares most about. And they, like the rest of the homepage, are completely customizable. In fact, Jake also has his punch list of to-dos, and he gets a sense of his meetings in that calendar component. So all of these tools help make Jake much more productive, anywhere and from any device, certainly. But as we glance back up toward the top, and just to the left of Jake's name, in Salesforce we're seeing something new. Every user now has a persona, and this is called Chatter. This is our new collaborative technology, and it's built into all of the applications that we already deliver. And we think it's really the future of enterprise business applications. Now, we didn't build a brand new UI or our own paradigm. It's meant to look a lot like Facebook and really to work a lot like Facebook. So Jake can go ahead and connect with fellow employees to really get his job done. In fact, if you notice off to the right, Jake gets a sense of all of his peers that are following him. And beneath that, in turn, he sees all of those colleagues that he's following. But it's more than just people. Data now comes to life. The data in the application is chattering. Jake can now follow his customers, his opportunities, business documents as well, like this product roadmap or, say, marketing collateral. Now, Jake can also provide status updates. So he can ask his followers questions, or he can let them know what he's up to, like he's really excited to be at Google I/O. So let's see how Jake uses Chatter. Just like when you log into your homepage of Buzz, or Facebook, or Twitter, you see a real-time news feed, and you get to decide what you want to follow. Well, now you can do the same at work. You're able to connect with people, with documents, and you start to get a sense that your colleagues are sharing best practices. They're asking for referrals. In fact, you notice updates from documents like sales presentations. The data itself is chattering. We notice that a case has actually been escalated. Everything's happening live. Third-party systems, they chatter as well. So we're getting an update from Oracle Financials that a customer hasn't paid their invoice. Now, Jake sees something interesting. If we scroll down a little bit, we notice that his sales engineer, Nicole Moore, has actually pushed an opportunity out to the end of June. And Jake naturally wants to investigate why, so he drills in. And for those of you that aren't regular Salesforce users, what we're looking at now is an opportunity record. And this is where sales reps spend the majority of their time, right? They want to track things like how big the deal is, when they anticipate it to close, who they're competing against. But every record now in Salesforce actually has a chatter stream. And it's this activity feed that helps people collaborate. So Jake can connect with people and with documents. Here we're getting some real-time visibility into why Nicole has actually pushed this particular deal out. Everything's happening in real time. That's really core to Chatter. And it's important to businesses these days as well. I mean, think about your experience on Amazon when you buy a book. You expect it to transact in real time. But quite frankly, a lot of businesses aren't yet working in real time. There's a lot of delay in the process. You have to check in a day or two to figure out the actual status. But with this system, everything's happening immediately. So Jake's able to make the determination that, okay, well, it looks like we're behind in a deal because there's a gap in the product that we're positioning. So what would he normally have to do? We'd have to loop his entire team in. They'd probably send a flurry of emails back and forth before they'd finally get an answer from a product manager about the new feature that's going to be released. Well, I'm happy to say that now there's a brand new way. Jake's able to initiate a wave. It's a workspace that's embedded directly within Salesforce. So as Jake creates this wave, a post is actually going out to Chatter to alert others, and automatically you'll notice that all of the team members on this particular sales deal have been added to the wave as well. And one of them, of course, is the sales engineer, Nicole Moore. So Kevin, let's actually log in as Nicole and get a sense of what she sees. So her experience when she expands her Chatter feed is that she now sees an update. Jake has created this wave, and she's able to drill directly in and start participating. Why don't we go ahead and split the screens here. We'll keep Nicole on the left-hand side, and we'll add Jake onto the right-hand side, and they're able to now have an actual conversation. So Jake might ask the question, well, when will the new feature be ready? And the sales engineers are typically the brains of the operation, so she has the bright idea to loop in the outsourced developer that's working on it. The outsourced developer. His name's Andrew, let's say. Okay. So Jake thinks that's a great idea, and he adds that external individual, right? This isn't somebody that's within his business. He adds Andrew to the wave, brand new participant. And then you all know how Wave works, so Andrew's going to get an email notification. He's going to access his Wave client. He's going to use the playback feature to catch up on what's happened. And maybe he uses Alan's fancy release gadget to automatically notify the team of the status build. Or maybe he just keys in that it'll be ready in a few days. Yeah. This is pretty amazing, right? The team's actually gotten a live result. They've even looped in another party, and they haven't left the app or the context of what they're working on. You can just imagine how much more businesses are going to be able to get done. And what's more, Jake's actually able to post an update back into the Chatter feed. So only Salesforce users, not the outsourced developers, only Salesforce users are able to authenticate in. Here we're using some OAuth to go ahead and post that update. So all of the security, the reliability, and availability that as enterprises you require are available in this particular scenario. So Jake goes ahead and broadcasts out to all of the opportunity followers. That's a greater audience than just the team members who are working on this sales cycle. He broadcasts out that this new build will be ready in a day or two. So let's go ahead and go back to the opportunity and show you what that looks like. The fact that there was collaboration, that an event occurred, that there was some workflow triggered or a process completes, that updates the Chatter feed. So that makes the team, the department, the people in the company that care really smart. They're made aware of what happens in real time. We think this is game changing, and so we've just launched our brand new toolkit. It's force.com for Google Wave. We hope you guys all build really exciting things. It's freely available at developer.force.com. We think at Salesforce that Chatter is the future of our company, and in general, collaboration really is the future of the enterprise. With that, turn it back over to you guys for some Q&A maybe?
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
So what we tried to show you today was an example of how you can use Wave in an enterprise environment, or even just in a small business environment, to try to do closer collaboration within your groups. And there were 5 steps to it. Step 0, starting to use Wave to help bring together structured and unstructured processes. Step 1, augment communications using those robots. Step 2, add gadgets, which allow for structured visualizations of the information. Step 3, use robots to then manage the variety of waves you'll need in your process. Step 4, start pulling in information from your corporate systems. And then step 5, integrate with some external systems, such as Salesforce, that we demonstrated. So again, as I said, this was just supposed to be an example to illustrate how it can be done. While we love Mr. Release, and in fact, Mr. Release is open sourced, so you'll be able to get the source code. We'll add the link into the live wave for it. So if you want to check it out or build your own variation on it, please do. Feel free. But what we're really interested in is helping you guys to understand what you can be doing with Wave. And with that, we'll go into some Q&A. And it looked like there was a number of questions already to answer some questions you guys might have. All right. So are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
Yes, hello. Oh, sorry. Actually, I have a question regarding how Salesforce integrated waves. My first question is, can you search all the wave which has been open for each lead that you created on Salesforce?
At this point, with the toolkit that we've created and this example application that we've shown, that isn't something that we've done, but it's certainly something that you'd be able to figure out using that toolkit.
Okay, because actually the issue I see so far is in Google Wave, the initial Google Wave, you have all the wave in a single place. In your application, all the wave are spread out on your application. So what I fear is that you got some important information that you can cross-reference, and then you need a search engine in order to do so.
So one thing about embedded waves is all of those embedded waves that you're a participant on will also show up in your inbox.
Right.
So all of the waves across that you're on a variety of pages in Salesforce will still all show up in your inbox together. So if you don't want to go back to those places to communicate, you can communicate with them together in your inbox.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Additional questions from the floor? Or should we do a... Why don't we do one from the moderator?
One from the moderator. So, will Wave be released to install on a local server within the enterprise, not just as a federated server, as it is now, but in its entirety?
Yes. So we are, as you probably saw from the announcement, we are open sourcing more and more of the code all the time. In terms of when it's going to be totally finished, we don't have a predicted date yet, but already, and this is actually a good opportunity for me to mention, that there are a number of people demoing out in the developer sandbox area, and some of them are working on their own Wave servers. So if you want the whole Wave experience as it looks today with the client and with the Wave server that you can run behind your own firewall, we're still working towards that goal, but we don't have a specific date for when that would happen yet.
Get Dan out.
Right. So we did just open source our editor, approximately 100,000 lines of code, which is one of the largest portions of our client. So we wanted to make that available so people can start to work with that as well. You have a question?
Just saw for the robots, the effectiveness of having a web app that can talk directly to the robots, which can then either initiate or make changes in waves. I have a little bit of experience in the gadgets, but not the robots. So with a simple post that can initiate, is that basically the way that you would, like the standard by which you would update or notify a robot? And then there was actually where it looked like the robot was actually sending a post to a wave. And I guess I didn't know that it worked like that. I just needed some clarification about that.
Right, yeah, I did skate over some detail there. So the Wave does send a post out to your robot, but it's a JSON request, JSON RPC request. We have a client library which you run inside your robot, which interprets that request and then delivers it to your application by calling an onDocumentChanged method or an onParticipantAdded method. So it's at a higher semantic level. And likewise, you can manipulate the wavelet as objects, and then the library packs all that back up into a JSON packet to send back to the robot.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot.
I'll take another question from moderator.
Okay. Is there a Google Wave app for Android phones? I can't view the waves on my Droid. It keeps complaining about the browser.
Yeah. So currently there actually is an Android-compatible version of the Wave client, but it's still quite slow. This is one of the areas. While we're out of preview and now into labs, one of the things we need to do before we actually launch is to have a mobile client. If you are using Android with Froyo, performance is much better. But it's still, you still might feel it's a little slow. One of the things that we've been talking about over the course of the last 2 days are the new APIs that we're providing that would allow someone to access, to essentially build an Android client. And I believe there's some folks out in the developer sandbox who are looking towards doing that. So right now there's not a full-featured and fast Android client or iPhone client, but we're working towards that. The one thing, if you want to try to use it with your Android phone, when you go to Wave, you're going to get a splash screen telling you that Wave is not compatible with your browser. There's a thing that allows you to click through on that and just continue to try to use it anyway. We just felt like we probably should warn people about these things. So it's mostly a warning. You can click through if you want to give it a shot. Questions from the floor?
Any other browser in Android works, like Skyfly or something like this?
I'm sorry, the question?
Any other browser in Android would make a difference?
So the question is, are there any other Android browsers that would make a difference in this? You know, to be honest, I don't think we've tested all the Android browsers, so it could. That's something we really should test, actually. Yeah, we haven't tested through all of them. All right, so the next question, is Wave going to be a part of Google Apps? The answer is yes. Actually, no, the answer is it already is, as of yesterday. So if you'd like to use Google Wave in your domain, you can get Google Apps. It's available for Standard, Premier, and Education. So if you already have a domain, you can just go into your control panel and turn it on. And if you want to try using it for your domain, you can sign up for Google Apps and try it that way. Question?
Yeah, sorry. Can you pre-field a wave from an API? Can you pre-field a wave from an API? For instance, instead of creating a blank wave, I would like to create a pre-filled wave, and then, like as I see in Salesforce, add people on it in order to create something on the spot about a specific topic. Is it possible?
Yes, in fact, that's what we were showing with the release wave and the component build waves. There wasn't actually a lot of content in there, but the robot inserts a gadget and a title and a little bit of text and puts that in there, and you can see the source code, and there'll be a link in the live wave.
But it is what you've shown, it's text within Wave. My question is from, I would say, any kind of source such as a RSS field. Can you, for instance, use this RSS feed in order to create a wave?
Oh, can you use an RSS feed?
For example, any kind of source, an external source of Google Wave could be integrated within a new blank wave from an API. Is it possible?
Yes, yes. So what you need to do is the robot web app needs to make a call back into Wave to say, create this wave, add this content, and then add these participants. And so exactly what calls you would make, it depends on exactly what you're thinking of doing. That's kind of what when we were updating the component status from the test status application, that's what it was doing, although it wasn't actually creating the wave.
Okay, and adding participant to the wave, like I've seen on Salesforce, so you have to know each users who has already a Google Wave account, right? Because in Salesforce, well, I guess not everyone has a Google Wave account. So how can you manage this case?
Sorry, say the question.
Well, okay. In Salesforce, I don't think that all users in Salesforce have a Google Wave account.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you want to create a wave with those people. How can you manage this situation?
So
Quentin here has an answer. He's the one that built the toolkit for Salesforce.
Can you use the mic?
do we have a?
No.
We can repeat what Quentin says.
Maybe back in the aisle there.
Yeah, or you can, Kevin will cozy up and you can talk into my mic.
Yeah, can you hear that? Yep. Okay, so in Salesforce, it's pretty easy to create custom fields. So all of the users that you saw that were added to the Wave, we had a custom field that had a Google Wave address. So by default, it will only add people onto the Wave that have Wave addresses.
So they are automatically created when they are added on a Wave, when they don't have an account, for instance?
Yep, so in the example here, a system administrator or maybe even the user themselves would go and update their user profile. One of the fields they can add is first name, last name, Wave address, so on and so forth. So the toolkit will go and look and see, can I add this participant to the Wave, i.e. do they have a Wave address? If they do, add them in automatically. And then through the Active Robot API, we'll actually do an add participant, which is the API method call that will add that user using the Wave address.
Okay, and can you create accounts on the spot? if it is necessary?
So this is something that if you're using Google Apps specifically, Google Apps does come with, I believe with Premiere, there is an API that allows you to create accounts on the fly. So you could do that if you had a Google Apps domain with Wave enabled. The other thing that we should just mention is for those waves that are embedded, if you don't happen to have a Google Wave account, you can still see it. If essentially anyone can see the wave if they can get access to that page, but you can't interact with it unless you have an account. And so if you wanted to, so you can embed it there. Everyone who's on that specific record can see the wave, and then you could use the Google Apps APIs to generate a new user to associate it with the current user in your domain, if that all makes sense.
No, makes sense. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks. Next question from moderator.
Yeah. How integrated will Wave be with the current product set and vice versa?
I'm assuming the current product set is the current Google Apps product set. This is something we're working on constantly to bring together more of the products between Wave and the other products in Google Apps. I don't have, unfortunately, specific timelines as to when any of these things will be done, but we certainly are talking to all of the other teams within Google Apps to bring some of these things together more closely. One thing there already is if you use Google Spreadsheets, excuse me, there is an extension that you can use to embed a Google spreadsheet into a Wave. And those are, so that's sort of one type of integration, the Google spreadsheet. Soon there will be an extension to integrate Google Spreadsheets into Waves. And then, so that's one type. The other type of integration to do is to allow you to export data from a Wave into something else, such as Google Docs or something like that. And so those are some of the types of things that we're working on. Other questions from the audience? Yes?
What approaches did you use in Salesforce to change the culture to adopt Google Wave?
Just to repeat the question, what approaches did you use in Salesforce to change the culture to adopt Google Wave?
Well, this was an example application, so it's not to say that the employees of Salesforce are making use of this yet. I think it'll definitely enrich everybody's collaborative capabilities. If I were to throw out some suggestions on how you could entice them to do it, I think one would be just to put it in front of them, right? Have a certain pilot group that starts professing how it's changed their lives. That would be really helpful. That's one of the tactics we've taken with Chatter. So we've rolled it out to 500 beta customers, and sometimes it started with just small pilot groups, and it's gone sort of viral within the enterprise from there. So I would recommend that as a first step.
And this is something that we, with all of the businesses that we've talked to, the way they really get started is pretty much precisely that, is that they choose a small project, have the people in that project get started on it, because then you learn a lot about sort of how your organization works. What are the sort of cultural norms and etiquettes in your organization that have already formed, and then build on top of those rather than trying to sort of jam a solution in and change everybody immediately. Next question.
Will Wave get an export function to export a Wave to a document in Google Docs?
It's certainly something we're thinking about and looking at, although we, again, don't have any specific dates.
One quick additional comment that I think would be helpful for folks. One thing we just shipped was the ability so that robots don't have to be on Google App Engine anymore. And so we're rolling that out right now, and that's going to be another thing for tailoring in the enterprise.
I'm sorry, say again?
Tailoring in the enterprise, if you're
exactly.
not. Yeah.
Yes, question.
Security model on this, just starting from zero, if I wanted to have a product ad for developers under the product to start, and then as it matured, add additional people that goes to the marketplace. Like, how do I keep everybody from seeing it? Do I need Google Apps account? Can I do it with, just a Wave?
So if I understand the question, what's the security model behind it in terms of how can you sort of start something small and then bring more and more people in as the project is developing or as the design is developing or something of that sort? So the way Google Wave works right now, for people who aren't as familiar with it, is the list of participants at the top of the Wave are the complete set of people who have access to that wave. Now, earlier when I mentioned that you had that you'd be able to see an embedded wave, that was specifically if you'd actually added public to that wave as a way to be able to say everybody has access to this wave. So we want to be, and this is one of these things we want to be excessively clear on, that the only people who have access to that wave are the people in the participant bar at the top. Now there are groups up there, which are additional people, and then there's also, there's groups, and then there's public, which basically means anyone can have access to it. So that's the first step. There's also two types of access permissions we have to Wave. One is full access, which means the person can do anything on the wave, can edit any of the blips as we refer to them, can delete blips, that sort of thing. And then there's read-only, which basically means the person can see the wave, but they can't make any changes to it. And so this is the kind of permission model you would use to sort of roll it out of. Initially, you would have a small set of people who'd be working together. You might add a group so that they could see what's going on with that wave as read-only, meaning all of the members of that group can see the wave, but they can't change the wave, they can't edit it, they can't do anything to it, they can just see it, and then sort of grow from there. Were you talking about building an extension? Or? No, okay. Thanks, Steph. Next question.
So yesterday at the Go session, they were talking about how you're going to be able to write robots with Go now. Does that mean you're going to have Go available in App Engine, or is that when you're going to write your robots on an external box?
So that is writing Go code not in App Engine, so it's on an external system. Okay. This is part of robots being available everywhere. Additional questions? Go for the moderator again.
Yeah. Any plans for a Wave Android app?
I think I answered it, but the answer is the direction we're taking with that is specifically building a web-based version of our app for Android that'll work with Android, not necessarily a native Android app. So we are working on that, and that's our plan. Next question. Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're talking about using Wave in enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of features or like options for the webmaster of the company to monitor the waves, or not letting the user delete the wave or something?
So one question was, if we're using Wave in the enterprise, what are some of the features that we're planning to put into Wave to really allow admins to get better control over what their users are doing in the enterprise, that sort of thing? So in the midterm, I would say, one of the main things we really want to allow administrators to do is have robots that are active on all of the waves in their domain. So this is something that we're looking at doing, although we, again, don't have a specific timeline for it. The reason for that is it means then the administrator can write robots to do whatever they feel like. So for instance, if you, let's say you're a company that was being sued and you had to keep some of the content that's in Waves, you could have a robot that basically just makes sure that even if all the other participants are removed from the wave, that wave is never actually deleted. So the way it works right now is if you remove everyone from a wave, that wave is removed from our servers within 60 days. But you could have a robot to essentially say, no, this sticks around permanently. You could have, we've talked to people who are interested in making sure that specific confidential information wasn't put into waves, and you could have a robot that would look for regular expressions matching specific patterns of confidential information and reverting any of those changes people tried to make in the waves. And so our basic approach is we want to empower admins by letting them use robots to do this sort of thing. That being said, we are also building some additional things that are going to be absolutely necessary in the enterprise, such as admins being able to get access to all of the waves in their domain. For instance, if people leave the domain and you need to get access to clean up their old data, those sorts of things. So we're looking to build those kind of things right now.
Will there be a set of tools or presentation materials available to tech-savvy users inside a business for the purpose of converting co-workers and bosses to Wave?
David Elstad of Chicago, Illinois, that's a great question. No, seriously, we absolutely. So this is one of the things we're starting to do more of to try to help people, arm people with the tools they need to talk to other people within their organization about Wave and help educate them on Wave. The case study about Deloitte that I mentioned earlier is just one of these things to help people understand in more detail. But we are starting to put together more materials to allow people to essentially sell Wave internally. This is something we talked about yesterday maybe a little bit, which is because Wave is a very flexible platform and product and protocol, what it means is that every organization is going to use it slightly differently. And so rather than us making a lot of materials to explain to everyone what Wave is doing, while we're going to do some of that, we really want to empower the individual administrators or the people who are sort of bringing Wave into their organization to explain how to use their process. And so some of the things we're looking at building are ways that you can have, when you install an extension, to be able to install saved searches with that extension so that you can help to tailor the person's client who's installing it, installing that extension to sort of help show them the things that would be interesting to them. And so we're really trying to build tools to allow admins and sort of people bringing it into the organization to explain it to their organization directly. And saved searches did ship. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. Next question.
Hi. At a certain class of enterprise app, you have to start thinking about things like globalization, disability law, accommodating screen readers and other things that are not mouse or otherwise oriented. Are you going to start building out editors that allow apps to comply with some of those things? If you're selling into governments and they say, is it accessible to disabled people?
So this is something we're already looking into. And one of the things that's actually really interesting about it is Wave, because of the extension framework you have in Wave, it actually has the potential to do a lot of really interesting things, such as if you, somebody was talking about using Wave robots to automatically highlight words and then speak them, to help people kind of low vision users to read through a Wave. So there's extensions that can be built, but just at the core of the product, we do need to do more work in the accessibility realm, and we are working on it.
Okay, and just for the people in the room, for just another example of an integration between an enterprise app and Wave, we're from Oracle, and we've built a similar integration to the Salesforce, so kudos to the Salesforce people, but come by and take a look at that as well, because we also think the Wave here is a very exciting prospect for the future of applications. Thank you.
And I'll definitely second that. There's, over the developer sandbox, there's a lot of really interesting things that people have built, from project management applications to time management applications, integrations with Oracle, SAP, Salesforce. So there's a lot of really interesting things over there if you're thinking about using Wave in your business to sort of check that out.
Next question. Will Google develop the feature that helps enterprise employees to receive and send Google Apps mail from Google Wave directly?
Ah, yes, the email question, as we are going to refer to it probably forever. We're looking at a variety of different ways to integrate Wave and email. I think we're looking at some things of integrating Wave and Gmail to see what that could look like, but also just Wave and email directly. Right now, you can get a notification from Wave to say that there's a new Wave for you. Fairly soon, you'll be able to add just email users to a Wave, and then they'll be able to get an email based on that Wave. So we're sort of rolling out some of these things, but again, we tend to roll them out as experiments to see what works and what doesn't work, because it's the interaction between Wave and email is kind of a tricky little beast, and so we're trying to make sure it's as smooth as possible. Alan, please ask the question.
Really? Is it that hard to get Wave to work on the iPad?
The answer is yes, apparently. We know why Wave doesn't work on the iPad. We haven't fixed why Wave doesn't work on the iPad. It turns out it is trickier than you might imagine. We actually had tried it on the emulator at one point, and it seemed fine, and it works on the iPhone, but it doesn't work on the iPad, which made us very sad. But it is something we're working on. Question?
Should I grab this next one?
Sure.
Just add a will in.
Okay. When will Google Wave Federation port be open on wave.google.com instead of Sandbox? Dan?
Yeah, so at this particular point, we don't have a time frame for it. We are working to do it as soon as we can, but the approach we're taking here is there's more model changes we need to make to the Wave model, and then we'll be able to open that port. And that's why we're open sourcing the model. And so this is part of that 100,000 lines that we're finishing up the open source of that Greg mentioned earlier. But that's the base situation there.
So the next one, question.
Yeah, sorry. I would like to know if it's possible to parse the text within a wave and then to send it somewhere else.
So I think the question is it possible to parse text using a Wave robot and then send it somewhere else?
Yeah, right.
Depending on what you mean by parse text, absolutely. So one of the things that Alan's robot that you saw did was actually both of them. So the chatter integration did this as well, where they said @chatter and then typed something and it sent it into the chatter feed. I think that was a great example of that.
And is it possible to imagine some kind of AdSense system within a wave?
I think it's possible to imagine it. Right now we're not heavily focused on kind of monetization in terms of trying to figure out how to incorporate something like AdSense into Wave. But we certainly have thought about lots of ideas in that area.
And is it possible to call external API within a widget which is designed for a Wave application?
Depends. So the question is it possible to call the...
Yes, different API. For instance, other Google API or external API from other application and to...
from a gadget?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, gadgets can make calls out to other servers. If you go around to the Sandbox, it was Travel With Me and Hostel With Me around the Sandbox. Those guys do a really good job of grabbing information from all different sources so you can see exactly where you're going and what it looks like.
And display it on a Wave.
It's displayed right in the Wave in a gadget. It looks great.
Thanks.
I guess we'll do one more question from here. And there's one more question in the audience. We'll take that, and then I think we'll wrap up.
Yep. Has the Wave team made public a list of organizational use cases with links to white paper studies and other material discussing Wave collaboration in the workplace?
Actually, yes. So if you go to wave.google.com / I believe it's /about.html, somewhere thereabouts, you'll be able to, we actually do have a list of examples of how people are using Wave, as well as the white paper that we talked about with Deloitte. One of the things we do a lot of times is when we find out and hear about really good use cases, we write up a blog post about them and post them to our blog. And so one of the things that does is it links out both to our blog posts where people have talked about organizations using Wave, as well as link to other organizations' blog posts that they've made talking about using Wave. That's a great point. So the GWT team and VMware have also offered to write a case study in their usage of Wave as they built the project that they've worked on that we announced yesterday. So that's something that we'll definitely look into putting up there as well. Unless there's any other last questions, thank you so much for coming today. A couple last pitches I want to make are please stay in your seats and hear all about the new Google Wave Media APIs, which is the next session in this room. If you're interested, please stick around for that. Check out the Sandbox. There's a lot of really interesting and cool stuff going on there. And try out Wave in your organization. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.